Okay, folks. Good morning. Good morning. I don't think I have to get really close to this mic for it to pick up because it's one of those. Well, I was messaging Paul Antleitner the other day about. Sorry about my breathing. About studio setup stuff, podcasting, live streaming stuff, and he was saying what kind of mics. If you have a. What is it? He understands this stuff so much more than me. What up, Chadrick? Condenser mics. I think this is a condenser mic, so I don't think I have to really be close to it because he was saying these other mics, the nicer mics, you have to get right here and talk directly into them. Ron. So I'm probably going to open this up earlier than I normally would because I don't have... I just want to play. I just want to talk. I want to see what other people have on their minds. Because I don't have a lot in the cooker. I don't have a lot of grist for the mill, which is surprising for me. PBK's the homeroom video this morning where he played some clips from he and Vocal Distance was pretty good. And oh snap, what was I gonna? There was something I was wanting to read on here. What was it? Oh, I don't have access to that. So a couple things. Okay, let's just say a couple things on my mind, and then we'll open it up and see it. So he played a couple clips from Vocal Distance where Ron, mega rain in Indiana. I can listen as I drive around dodging raindrops. Good luck to you, buddy. So he was doing that, and then he was saying stuff that Vocal was talking, and I don't know. I haven't listened to the whole conversation because it's in the 4 members only section. I started it and it wasn't bad. I mean, Vocal, Nate and I both, McMo was messaging me of like why both Nate and I aren't necessarily fond of Vocal, and Nate said it more strongly than me. And I think it's just because he's overly political culture warrior-y, but I know nothing of him except from him popping up on Paul's channel. But he was saying some really solid philosophical stuff that I love, especially from the clips. And Paul said as much in the video because he was quoting him. What was the quote? He quoted Vocal at one point saying, let me see if I can find it. I'm going to get an ad here. I'm sorry. Forget about that. Go find my quote. So PG Campbell, I don't know who this cat is, but he must have been a teacher of Vocal, but he said, the only test of a true metaphysics is that it's a thing you can't describe your way out of. Which is that's a great phrase. And PBK rightfully recognized it. And he said, yeah, this is basically what all of Luke's live streams are about. Because your ontology, your being is deeper than your self-awareness and your conscious articulation. Think Polanyi's modernist assumptions of knowledge is deeper than your description of it. It's more fundamental. It's what would be the logical term? I mean, I don't know if it's. I always forget these a priori, a posteriori. One means from the former, and one means of itself. I forget what the Latin means, but Chad, yeah, you can only live it. Exactly. Gage, you always get it. I saw Jacob was doing a just chatting, and Gage was on there. I watched some of that. Our old boy Parlato or Calvin Harris was on there. Foxman, Racco. Okay. Ooh, this is a great question, Anthony. Why not? I should just put out an invite, right? I'll look at some of these comments and put out an invite. What was the other thing I was wanting to say? Oh, at some point, this is another thing I want to talk about because Zach Parsons, Zach, if you're out there, was leaving me some nice messages on my last live stream about Rollins. He said, I mean, these are positive messages that I love, and that's part of why, outside of just the community and friendship, of why I keep coming back to TLC and why I can't quit you, is there are positive messages. You know, you get things where people say they help you, and he said something like, man, I wish I would have discovered Luke, or I needed Luke 7 years ago or something. And like, those are my people. Zach, you're my people who you are like, where you were 7 years ago is the exact kind of people that I want to talk to, help if I can, commiserate with, co-suffer. Cause like, I get, you are almost like a quintessential example of the kind of person who grew up in a Christian context, or post-Christian, or secular, or whatever, and has this weird relationship with religion. I was talking about this in my book club last night, because all these guys are, I go to a book club with all these very, academic type guys, but they're just not in this world. And we were talking about the phenomenon of, because one of them in there is an author, and he's starting to write books, and he's submitting them, which sounds like I don't know, just like a hellish thing. You put all this work into a book, and then you put it out there, and then you just get rejections upon rejections upon rejections. But good for him. He's got this real passion for writing. It's fantastic. Shout out Ben. I don't think you watch any of these. I don't think really pretty much anybody in my real life watches these things. And that's understandable. But his second book is about, how did he describe it? It really, I was like, oh crap, that's like my favorite subject. But essentially it led into, I forget exactly what it was, but then it led into this conversation of Christian atheism, Dawkins Switch, Tom Holland, Douglas Murray, all these people that are they're beginning to recognize increasingly that it's the Jordan Peterson phenomenon. It's everything in his wake, that we live in a Christian world, Judeo-Christian world, and that is the deeper religio, or like Yoram Harzoni said, that like anything that binds a body together is this deep set of tacitly held values. Like, that's what makes a community a community. So even like when Dennett is talking about civilization or community is this deep thing of which things emerge, well, I mean, you're kind of equivocating language, like what you're calling civilization, Jordan Peterson, or we would call religion. But most modern people downstream of new atheism, they equate religion with this institutional, confessional, propositional, modern form of religion, which is not really what religion is. Religio in a Vervaeke kind of ligament way. Rob Bell spoke about this really well in a I wish I knew this podcast. I should put this in the notes, but like where he talked about ligaments, ligature. Like Rob Bell, I mean, Vervaeke, great, yay Vervaeke, but Rob Bell was talking about this stuff. I've learned a lot from Rob Bell. He's been talking about this stuff for a long time, but people disregard him because of political reasons, I think, because he left the conservative political fold. So John Piper tweets, "Farewell, Rob Bell." Well, actually, that's because he put out the book Love Wins, which is just being open to universalism, which is just asking questions about universalism. He doesn't even say dogmatically he is a universalist. And like, that kind of stuff is just silly. Like, somebody who is a universalist can't have a seat at the table, and like, you're automatically farewell, like you're outside the camp if you even start to be open to ask questions about it. Sorry, Anthony. I'll go back to your question. What would you say is the relationship between the propositional and the word? Okay, well, I would ask you a further question. By the word, would you mean the logos? Man, there was a great comment about this very distinction recently. Mitch, what up, Mitch? Luke. Hi. Mitch and I both love Mitch. Again, synchronicities abound. Just sent me Medium Build. Medium Build is this artist I'm loving recently. And Mitch has a great taste in music and film, and sent me Medium Build. And I was like, yeah, I've been digging on Medium Build for a while. How's that for all the new language thing? Digging? Can we say digging? That reminds me of, is that an old TLC song? Digging on you, digging on me, baby, ooh, baby. It's all like that. It's all like that. If you don't like TLC, get out. Get out. You're excommunicated. You want to excommunicate me for being open to universalism? And I mean, I just call myself a universalist. Hopeful, yes, obviously. Again, who isn't? But who shouldn't we all be hopeful universalists? But I think it should have just as much a legitimate seat at the table as any of the other two views. But the word in its fullest sense. This is what you mean. Thank you. Diggin'. Nah, dork. Sorry. Parlato. Okay. The word in its fullest sense. Logos. Yeah. Logoi. The implanted word. The word that is preached. All the word. So like if you're talking logos, is, like let's get biblical. If we're talking about the biblical logos and how does that relate to the propositional? So Paul also said in his video, and I put a timestamp on it, that Nate brought up in a conversation recently that we need to add a new P, which is the personal. And I've been saying this a long time. I don't think the personal is an additional P. It is the unity and the integration of all the P's, and it is necessarily mediated and contained within a person. So personalist knowing is all the P's in integration. So propositional, procedural, perspectival, participatory, the 4 P's. My wife loves it when I do this kind of thing with my hands. I don't know why. It's weird. It's like saying moist or something. I think the personal is the implanted word, which is the logos or the divine spark. It's Christ, the whole mystery of Christ, Christ in me. That is the whole mystery of Christ from Colossians 1. This is what Wayne Fair, shout out to his series that he's been doing recently, and then his recent conversation, or his only conversation so far, I guess, with Jordan Daniel Wood. But they are, what is this whole mystery of Christ? And succinctly, it is Christ in me. And so it's not, and Nate and Chezi were talking about this really in their conversation about Christianity and Judaism, which is great, which I actually haven't finished, but love both those guys. But they were talking about this, is that's one of the hangups between Christianity and Judaism, is the exclusivity and particularity of Jesus, of the historic person Jesus Christ. But like I've said to Chezi many times, the particularity, this is part of what Trinitarian theology is, and multi-unity and relational ontology, is the particularity is not a denial of the universal. And Christ is the particular universal. Or McLuhan, what's the great McLuhan quote? This like says everything. When I say anything, when I talk about anything, I'm talking about everything. And this is the most, like, McLuhan is just the best. He's simply the best. Better than all the rest. So in Jesus Christ, there is no distance or separation between the medium and the message. It is the one case where we can say that the medium and the message are fully one and the same. Completely agree. But he is not the only place in an exclusive, particular way. He is as the first fruits. This is the whole mystery of Christ, Christ in me. Christ the first fruits, and then all things in their own place and time. So eventually God will be all in all. Christ, the thing that holds all things together, in him, Colossians 1, in him all things have their being. In him we live and move and have our being. Christ, the only existent one. But then that reality will manifest universally, everywhere, in everything and in everyone, in its fullness, and that is the kingdom of God. And so to answer your question, like, the propositional is a part of that. The way that I've always thought of propositional knowing is that it is potential. And the difficulty, Anthony, from my perspective, with modernity and our current mode of consciousness with propositional knowing, which is all what that vocal distance thing is about. It's that quote of from PVK that it's what I always say is, like, you can't think your way out of a prison made of thoughts. Or the vocal distance thing is the only test of a true metaphysics is a thing that you can't describe your way out of. So you can't propositionally think your way out of it or describe your way out of it. It's deeper than that. It's fundamental to that. It's like in Western philosophy, there's this per se and per accidens causation. There's different kinds of causation. It's a distinction that was made by, I forget, but it's kind of like, if you can, just for a thought experiment, think outside of time and think a billiard ball, like a ball hitting a ball, like this comes into this and causes it. That's a per accidens. This, then this. Per se causation isn't bound in time. It's just like a logical or a relational causal thing. It's not a temporal thing. So like when you open your eyes, do you see or do you open your eyes first? Yes. And God, that's what the begetting of this Father and the Son is like. Or like the Son and the Father, they're co-eternal, meaning like the Son wasn't begotten in time, but the Father is per se fundamental, because a father comes logically or relationally before, but outside of time, that's it. It's really hard to wrap your head around when you're stuck in a linear causal mode. And so the propositional, I would say, is number one. I can't recommend Polanyi enough. Polanyi is all about this stuff, his modernist assumptions of knowledge. So like propositional is necessarily nested in self-awareness. When you say something, you have to be, yes and no, even. This is the problem of identity and identity. Even if you say something, this is the problem with the Sunday school answer, is you can say something and profess something. This is a lot of the Rollins stuff. You can't, it doesn't mean, just because you think something doesn't mean that you actually believe it, or like thinking that you ought to believe something doesn't mean that you truly believe it. And so, but when you say something, you're at least self-aware of it to some degree. But Polanyi's whole point is there is this huge tacit dimension that is fundamental and per se underneath all of that, that contains that, but is also much bigger than that. It's the right brain or the unknowing or whatever. And so the propositional is, this is where, everybody says I'm anti-propositional. I'm not, because the propositions are important. And I can't remember whatever live stream I was talking about it, but I was talking about my own personal experience with Reformed theology and how it was really, it really led to a kind of nihilism and was very unhealthy for me. And that was stemming from the propositional. So the propositional, if you really stay within certain modes of propositional professions and confessions, those things will form you over time. They do. That's the purpose of them, because they are potential. A proposition is meant to be embodied, but in and of itself, it's dead. I feel like there's a scripture about that. It's not coming to me, though. It's out there a little. There's like a perfect verse for it, but I can't think of it. So I don't know. I don't know if that helps. Propositional does matter, and it is important, but it shouldn't be the problem of the modern problem in propositional tyranny. Is it's been forefronted. It's been elevated to the most important thing, and that's silly. I would say propositionally that's silly, but again, take it or leave it, I guess. All right, let's look at some of these comments. Trey, are you a meta-modern Christian? I don't really know. So after Paul's longer conversation with Brandon Graham Dempsey, is that his name? Because Brandon Dempsey was something else, and so he added in the third name. And then also, if you use all three of your names, you sound more academic and credible. I don't know. I don't really know what I think about meta-modern stuff. And Nathan Woods was telling me the other day that a lot of early Christianity tried to not think about what they thought about stuff too much, because that's the logismoi. Like, I don't know if I think, how do you spell it? Logismoi, something like that. I'll try to put it up here. The spelling is probably wrong, but you guys know what I'm talking about, I think. Where are we at? So logismoi, but that's essentially like You can think of it as like intrusive thoughts, or C.S. Lewis in the Ransom trilogy, especially in the second Paralandra, when he's down in the belly of the earth, which the symbolism is profound. He talks about the voluble self, VOLUBLE, which is chatty, like the chatty voice inside your head, which I associate a lot of those with intrusive thoughts, like this voice in your head that just never shuts up. Is that good or is that bad? I don't know. We'll see. And but a lot of the early church, especially, and I think Nathan's right about that, tried to just disregard those things. And I replied to him, like, what do you think about this? It doesn't matter. I don't know. I don't know what I think about that. Like, I see half of me sees the wisdom in that and the value in that. Half of me, or another part of me, I don't know that it's exactly half, says, and I was just saying this in the Grail Country chat this morning, who do you say that I am matters. I don't know. I'm in a mode now where I would say that God cares what we actually think about things. I think that's important, because otherwise I think you fall into a kind of almost Calvinist, existential pantheist self that where like you don't really exist. Like, it doesn't matter. Again, it's just Christ. It's not Christ in me. It's just Christ separate from me. And then it's some kind of weird Trinitarian pantheism. But Tunji, what up, my boy? Hey, buddy.
Hey, man.
You're a little quiet, but I'm just reading through comments. What you're here? What brings you in? You coming to hang? You have some stuff to say?
Yeah, I just watched the stream of yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't catch up. I catch up this morning, and I am a little bit with PVK there. I do not understand what's his name.
Peter Rollins.
Rollins. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have an intuition of what he's talking about and the significance of what he's talking about, but I don't get really the way that is. I don't get the profundity of it in the way that he's explained the things.
Yeah.
So I kind of I lose interest when I listen to him, and I kind of give up. That's
Well,
my
right,
bad.
and that's completely legitimate, because it's either, Sherry said this, and I think it's true, and this is part of the way that just people work. There is no universal prescription for everyone, I would say, outside of the generic Christ. But the reason I say that with the generic Christ is because he has universal application to everyone and everything in their own way. And so, like, someone like Peter Rollins, he's either deep calls to deep. Either he resonates with you or he doesn't. And if he doesn't resonate with you, well, you can't live whatever. Even if he's saying something true, you can't live it, so it doesn't matter, because you don't understand what he's saying. It's like somebody could be speaking Chinese and saying something profound, but if you don't speak Chinese and you can't understand him, it doesn't matter. So just let it go. I just like him because he was really, like, and Jess said, he has been and continues to be very beneficial for me and for Jess. Jess probably less so now. He feels like he's kind of moved beyond what Rollins is saying, but I think there's a particular kind of person that he's going to be very helpful for. But not everyone is helped by the same things, and that's totally fine.
That's right. And I was making a point the other time, the other time about the principality, and they connected with the Jewish sons with the aspect of obedience. I don't know if I am onto something there, but that was my intuition. I don't know if it is related with what Rollins once said. But to me,
can you say it one more time? I was slightly distracted. Sorry.
Yeah, the connection between Jewish sons and obedience, and the reason why I wanted to make a point about a principality, the ideology being a principality, because what fundamental aspect of a principality, a god, a lord, a power, or any authority, is that they ask you something, they demand something from the subjects. And intrinsic in the human nature, there is um, the instinct of obeying someone, to worship, obey. And related with the act of our obedience, there is a certain satisfaction that we realize when we obey to somebody or someone. And sometimes we can see I'm rebelling. We have the thrill. It's a kind of a thrill, um, a spark of ecstatic sensation that happen even when we rebel. But the argument is that when we rebel, we are actually obeying another authority instead of the one where we are supposed to.
Mm-hmm.
So every time that we obey to something or someone, we have that spark of pleasure in us, instant and immediate, that I don't know, it makes the things even more addictive in a sense. Yes, I like that.
Yeah, no, I think that's true. I mean, to try to relate to it even in my family or something, it's kind of how we'll say we all have mommy issues or daddy issues or parental issues, and all of that is because we are in some kind of misalignment or disintegration with our parents, because to some degree what all of us really want is the approval and the love. We want the approval and the love of our parents, of our authorities, but we want it in a way that is properly integrated and not disingenuous to our own integrity. And so, like, there can be a way in a parental-child relationship where if the parent is not in alignment properly with themselves and with God and with the child, they're trying to coerce or manipulate or mold the child in a way that is, I don't know what's the wrong word, inauthentic or not integral to who the child really is. Trying to reform the child in your image in an identical replicant way, like you're just trying to. That's when people will often say the father is maybe trying to live vicariously through the children, like to be a great athlete or something because they weren't, and then they can live vicariously through the child or something. But is that really who that child really is and what their gifting is and what their vocation is? Or are you just trying to? It's like people will hear of Tiger Woods. You're familiar with Tiger Woods, that his dad, like from a very early age, there's almost like the joke that he like super glued a golf club in his hand from the time he was like 4. And so like, I say all that to say, like, there's a strong impulse that can be both positive and negative to winning the approval of an authority. And that's clear in a family, but it can be that way in a church. It can be that way in an institution. It can be that way anywhere. But I really do agree with you that jouissance, this kind of enjoyment, I think you are getting an enjoyment or a pleasure. It's almost like that out of either obedience or disobedience. I mean, I really agree with that. And properly, when everything is properly aligned, you're getting enjoyment out of sacrificing for the Father. I mean, that's Jesus in Gethsemane. That's him. Not my will, but your will. That's what he's doing. Is like, there's part of me that doesn't want this, but it doesn't matter. Like I'm getting for the Hebrews 12, for the joy set before him endured the cross, despising the shame. So in that's a very like John Piper future grace idea of like, there's a joy in there.
Yeah.
For the joy set before him, the promised joy.
So we are putting together obedience and alignment to a, you can say, archetype, or simply your father.
Mm-hmm.
So you are aligned to your essence and the essence of your lineage, or what you're supposed to be. But maybe I was making the point that there is something that is intrinsic in human nature, given to us, that give us it's programmed to give us joy when we obey, rather than simply being a secondary manifestation of a bigger problem.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think that's
to be universal.
That's just love, man. Like, I can't. I mean, if I really think about myself, and I mean, I probably don't want to talk about it too deeply or intimately because I'll probably just start crying. But like, seeking, if you could have proper alignment and relationship with both of your parents where they, I mean, that's essentially like all I've wanted my whole life is I mean, Lance knows that and makes fun of me all the time for wanting affirmation, but a lot of that is just like due to childhood wounds that I feel like I never really had the approval of my parents, you know? So like that's what you're always seeking somewhat, is the approval of them. And but we need to be able to do it in a way that maintains your own kind of integrity, what Sherry always talks about, that your center, that Douglas Harding center. You can't deny, like that's the weird thing. It's like, deny yourself, take up your cross and follow me, but deny yourself, I would say deny your false self. You can't deny your true self, or else then that's where like then you don't exist. That's not Christ in me. That's some weird kind of thing. You know, I don't. That's a really hard thing to wrap your head around. But anyhow, I don't know. Chad, Luke,
Hey there.
Luke, long time no see.
Hi. I know it's been a while. Yeah, just needed some adult conversation, so glad that it worked out for me to join. Yeah, I'm on my way to meet my wife. It's her birthday today, so we're hanging out. But I'll be in the car for like 15 minutes. So anyway,
Oh, nice.
happy to
Your
just
wife's
hop on
birthday?
for a minute. Yeah, it's my wife's birthday.
Happy birthday, Luke's wife. What are you guys doing? What's on the agenda? How are you romancing?
Well, I'm meeting her for a chiropractic adjustment.
Oh, lovely.
and then we're going to the thrift store.
Yes.
And then we're gonna get sushi. So it'll
Oof.
be a great time.
Sushi. Well, you know me. Tom Lukeson loves good sushi with a free car.
Yeah.
Car, free sushi. Yeah.
Yeah, but no, I'm so glad you're doing a live stream today, Luke. We had small group for our church last night, and it was just a bunch of small talk, which it's always so hard for me to engage in small talk, and it just left me craving some deep conversations.
Yeah.
And anyway, I've been thinking a lot about Pete Rollins. I don't know if you feel like talking about that, but also, I mean, you guys talk about living vicariously through your children. It was funny. I mean, last night we were talking a lot about Pee Wee baseball and how big Pee Wee baseball is up here in Arkansas. And it's just such an example of parents living vicariously through their kids. I'm like, there's obviously a lack, for parents. There's obviously some kind of deep lack if you're, yelling at the coach of your 8-year-old's Pee Wee baseball team,
Oh man, that reminds me so much. So I came from a big wrestling town, so in South Dakota. So I came from this super little town that had like 800 people, but there was this kid who started wrestling. He started wrestling in 7th grade and was about like, he lost about half his matches, but then he decided to get really serious about it and just like started training like a psychopath. And then he went on to be a 5-time state champion from his 8th grade on, because you could do varsity in South Dakota 8th grade. Small towns, wrestling's a great sport for like rural farm kids and ranch kids. And then he went to the University of Iowa and was like a 4-time national champion at Iowa, wrestled in the Olympics. And so like ever since then, like my town was like a wrestling town. And I had an older brother who was really good at wrestling, kind of varsity from junior high on. And I have this vivid memory. Well, he was actually ranked first at state going into his senior year, and he quit, which is kind of an interesting thing because he was just burnt out. Because this is like this whole thing. This is to your point, because I remember this one tournament. It was in Fort Pierce, South Dakota, and my brother was wrestling. I actually don't remember if it was. I had 2 older brothers. I don't remember which one it was, but I adamantly remember they had like a raised track at the gym. So all the mats are on the lower floor and there's a raised track. And I remember my dad on the raised track just like screaming at the top of his lungs, like a complete psychopath at, I don't know, at one of my brothers or at the coach or whatever. I don't remember what it was. I was pretty young at the time. I was like going around trying to like you know, get my riz on with older cheerleaders. and I just remember that so vividly. And it just it like simultaneously scared me and embarrassed me. It was this weird thing because wrestling didn't come in until like the year after my dad graduated. So he never wrestled, but like he would have loved to.
Yeah.
And all his boys wrestled, and he was just like manic about it. He was just like, he like hung up this rope for us to like climb the rope to like get strong hands. And I mean, it was like maddening. He was just like, wake up and do 100 push-ups every day. You know, it was just like military training.
Yeah, but then it sounds like you weren't interested in wrestling, right? So then you weren't able to kind of live up to your dad's aspirations for you or something like that?
I mean, I was like a little emo boy fat kid growing up in rural South Dakota on a cattle ranch. I mean, wrestling isn't made for chubby kids, like kids that just like want to eat an entire box of Fruity Pebbles. Like wrestling is not made for you, you know? And so it's like, the last time I ever wrestled was in 8th grade. And I think I mean, this is how sad wrestling is. And it's gotten a lot healthier, but, I started off the year probably weighing like 125 or something in 8th grade. I was still pretty little. And I cut weight down to like 95 pounds in 8th grade, which is stupid. Like, that's stupid. What? You shouldn't ever even allow a kid to do that. And like, yes, was I kind of chubby when I started? Sure. I was always chubby. But then, and I remember the last night, like I didn't drink water for like a couple days. And I was cutting weight so much. And like I was just splashing water in my mouth the last night and just like spitting it out because I couldn't even drink water. And then the tournament, like I got destroyed this last tournament because I was essentially just, you know, trashed. My body was trashed. And the only thing about wrestling, that I wasn't like a freak athlete like my older brother he's just really athletic and good. Like I was okay, but I was strong. I was usually stronger than kids my weight. And not then. Not after I was just emaciated and almost dead. And I was just like, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. And I'm sure it was disappointing to my father, but, you know, whatever. Add it to the list.
Right. But I think, I mean, it seemed like you guys were also talking about, you know, something like potential within a person. And I mean, we have twin boys they just turned 3. And just as a father, the thing I always try to keep in mind is my job is to see that potential in them and to foster the development of that potential into something like who they are meant to be. Because I think I just see so many examples of like just severe damage that's done by a father who imposes some kind of ideal on their child without being sensitive to who that child is. You know, it's like there's a relationship there. I mean, and a lot of it, I feel like, especially with our boys being so young, is just, it's that having the eye to see who they are, you know, kind of who God created them to be.
Yes.
And then, you know, my job is to foster and encourage that, you know. So it's like if they want to play baseball, that's awesome. I mean, I didn't play baseball, but if they want to, heck yeah, I'm going to do my best to foster that. But I'm not going to throw them into some sport just because I want them to be successful at it because I couldn't be successul at it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, no, and it doesn't have to be sports, but I think that illustration is exactly how God is. A good father does not force something on you and conform you. He husbands you and nurtures you and gardens you into the fullness of who you are meant to be, which as Christ in me. You know, that's what I would say. But anyhow, Chadrick, Tayo, and also Matt. Yeah, you can't. Well, depending on how much weight you're cutting, you can't drink water if it's going to make you miss weight. It's not good for you.
Yeah, my brother went through a lot of that stuff. It was insane. I didn't have the balls or the discipline or like even desire to put myself through that sort of thing.
No, it's like, but it's one of those things in retrospect. It's like the Jordan Peterson thing. There was so much suffering in it. But in retrospect, I'm super happy I was a wrestler. I'm super
Well,
happy my
so
dad
there's
forced me
ways.
to do it.
There's there's other things that people could do that are like maybe a couple levels below that in the emergent stack,
Okay.
which is like encourage a way to be able to have really honest conversation, and encourage your children to be able to um, express their discontent and give them a useful and productive path towards things like making amends and seeking God kind of on their own terms. I know this sounds probably really foreign to people, but like, so the reason why I bring this up is because when I look at what we're actually talking about here, we're talking about a separation between God and our fellows. This is the spiritual malady, the thing that drives much of people's separation and anxiety and depression, hatred, all this self-loathing, all this different kinds of stuff is inside of this. So along and upon exploring that with other people, we find out what are the causes and conditions. We do that through inventory, and oftentimes it's um, primarily driven by fear. Like, here's an example: when I first did my first fourth step, I was terrified of writing this one thing, a couple things down, and it wasn't the tough, weird shit that happens between teenagers when they're kids. That wasn't the the stuff I'm talking about. The weird shit that kids do with each other when they're hanging out. Okay,
Yep.
that wasn't the shit that I was afraid to write down. What I was really afraid to write down was one time I stole some quarters from a friend when I was drunk, and he was playing drums and I was playing guitar. And I was 21 at the time. I stole a bunch of quarters from him off of his dresser so I could drink. And I lied to him when he asked where did my quarters go, and I helped him look for them.
Yeah.
I was afraid to write that thing down.
I remember this story,
And
Chad, and I love it so much because I play it in my head, and this isn't to diminish it because, like, I know this is a big deal for you, and it is, and it was, but it's one of
yeah.
those things that, like, from the outside, it's like a funny, cute story, but like for you, it was like you're destroying your soul.
Well, the difficulty here, the thing is, what I'm getting at in this, like maybe this proper fundamental emergent stack of relational caring about each other is we get cut off from our fellows when we're afraid of, like, where do you think I got the idea to be afraid to tell my sponsor? Because that's really what it was. I was afraid to tell him I stole quarters from somebody and helped him look for it. So that's where that was where the fear was. And where do I learn that stuff?
You talking
Well,
about
I learned that
shame?
stuff. Yeah, different stuff I learned how to do that when in life earlier I was discouraged and I was discouraged from telling the truth
Yeah.
by punishment. And so
Yes. Yeah.
like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
would I would say that if parents could really really focus their attention on how to better heal those or create those kinds of structures for honesty, then it doesn't matter whether they go to baseball, wrestling, or painting, or playwriting, or math, whatever. Like, if you get down there first, and you and it's hard to do this because of authority, and people don't want to be underbearing or overbearing. It's crazy, but yeah.
Yeah, I think it all boils down to loss of relationship. I mean, I think that's the big fear the child has is like a
Yeah.
loss of relationship with that parent figure. And then they project that onto other relationships. But
Yeah.
that's such a good point, Chad. Such a good point.
Yeah. So, well, I'm at my job site. I better get my sorry ass in there. You guys kick
Thanks.
ass.
Thanks for
Have fun.
stopping in, Chadrick.
Bye,
Beautiful
Chad.
man.
Toodles.
See ya.
Yeah, you guys have thoughts on that? I mean, I think that's huge. It's like how to do that though is like, I don't know. And as a parent who has kids that are a little older, I think my wife and I do a decent job at that. I feel like my wife's better at that, probably. Like if I don't know, maybe that's my own POS and self-loathing, but I do think probably objectively she's better at that than I am. Because I'm judgier. I come from a long line of judgers. And I'm very judgy myself. And so it is difficult. Like how do you that proper discipline, you know, in the New Testament talks about, you know, the good father disciplines those who he loves, you know. Ones he doesn't discipline is like a bastard child. Like you actually discipline kids that you care about, that you want them to have proper behavior. But how do you do that in a way that doesn't crush their spirit and make them not want to tell you the truth? That's a hell of a thing.
Kind of feels like an optimal grip kind of issue. You know, it's like I mean, my background's in horticulture, so I always think about it in plant metaphors, but it's a lot like, I mean, there's both the pruning and then there's the, you know, trellising. So there's the cutting off the dead wood and then there's the conforming the plant to the structure. And it's like it takes a gentle hand, because if you try to bend it too much, it'll break. It's a really gentle touch. And I think it's one of those things you just have to kind of learn by doing, you know?
Yeah. No, I think that's
Yeah.
totally true. And that's thank you for filling in for Sherry when she's not here. But yes, absolutely. I think that's exactly right. I actually think that's one of the reasons that poetry is so profound, and all those nature illustrations and imagery and things, because like that's exactly what it is. What you described is exactly how you should parent. It's like trellising, and you have to be gentle yet firm and have real structure and conform the thing, you know. It's like be renewed by the what is that? What's that verse? Be conformed by the renewing of your mind, like all that stuff. And it's
Right.
and I think this Jeremy comment is spot on, you know, how to calm down and think it through before disciplining. I mean, you can't, like, as a parent, if you react emotionally out of your passions and anger at a child, well, I mean, of course they're not going to want to tell you the truth or what they really did, because they'll be like, well, that's scary, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, I gotta hop off, but
see you,
guys.
buddy. Have a good
Great
day with
seeing
your
you all.
wife.
Bye. Thanks.
Yeah. I'm not sure how this dialogue, though, helps me live vicariously through my future children and force them to do comedy until they're famous. So, you
don't
know,
want to do that?
That's probably what's really important, is making sure that my dreams are fulfilled through my children. I will say, I guess this is also a point to add, is like, you're not big enough to contain all of the child. Like, the child's also another human. So like having a community, having a group, having like the parenting partially will be done by other people and other figures in your world. So
are you quoting Hillary Clinton? It takes a village.
Well,
thank you.
I have my little icon of Hillary right outside of camera view. So
Saint Hillary.
You know, I'm wearing the bottom half of a pantsuit right now. But yeah, I think like having that community, having some sort of order, and like that, the individual versus the collective is a debate we're eternally having. So like, you can't just be like, oh, well, the pastor says this, so I guess I need to beat him mercilessly. You know, like, obviously there are stories like that. And
oh my gosh, there are such bad parenting books. Like, I've read, in the culture I grew up, I've read some parenting books. I'm trying to think of the name of the one right now that I'm thinking of, but I'm going to use an illustration from the book that's just how horrific this parenting is. But like, this book legitimately said, I mean, it was like a very much spare the rod, spoil the child thing, which I understand, but it said, the book prescribed and advocated that you should set up, you should command the kid to do things that they can't do, almost that they're going to fail at, and then punish them like when they don't do it, to just teach them this. I don't know. It was like, I can't remember. I hope I'm not misrepresenting that, but I don't even remember the name of the book. So whatever. Just know it was evil. It was bad. This person is bad. The person who wrote it is bad. If we could just get rid of them, the world would be a beautiful place. That's my book jouissance, my ideological book jouissance. There we go. But I get your point. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. The also, I mean, this is very Petersonian, but like with the whole Firth comment, like when you take that step back, you like analyze the situation, you don't act out of your passions. You have to the model you use to like think of the child and what's right for them needs to contain the model of you and what you need. So it's like, oh, well, it's okay if he punches me in the face. It's like you're saying you're something that is okay to be punched,
Yeah,
you know, and you're not modeling how you should be treated appropriately. And that isn't just like, oh, because you can do whatever you want or you have the power. It's no, if someone keeps punching me in the face, eventually I will find some way to like hurt that person. And if you allow your kids to like be abusive to you, eventually you will like snap in some way. You're not like this infinite glowing orb of love and charity. It's like you're also a human being. So
do you have
a lot of
cameras set up in my house?
Oh yeah.
There is
So
like, dude, there are what gets more complicated for me is when your kids get older, and it's not like me and my wife always say when kids are young, like it's easy. Like you have almost like even toddlers. People think toddlers are crazy, but you're like God to them. I mean, you almost have like complete control over them. You can almost make them do whatever you want. When they start becoming adolescents and teens, and then let's talk about some of the, we can talk about the patriarchy, but let's talk about the negative, evil, malevolent matriarchy. The malevolent feminine, like when I have daughters that are emotionally abusing me relationally, how do you respond to that? Oh God, it's the worst thing ever.
yeah.
Oh, so
Have
terrible.
have you tried withholding affection and not telling them why? That's probably the most effective means that I've.
That's not a good thing, but this one of my children I'm thinking of, they wouldn't even notice. So they will just emotionally abuse me, and then I would try to play that game back, and they wouldn't even notice. And all I would do, it's just me drinking the poison, hoping that it hurts them back. I'm like, you don't understand that I'm just a scared little boy that wants affirmation and love, and you're being mean to me, and you're my child. It's so horrible.
Yeah, I will say though that like that really like, I mean, I always talk about it, but that summer camp I worked at, like like so much was done communally. Like there's a way of being in the community. Like I honestly like don't know how I got through it without like more like I literally I'm alone in a cabin with 6 13-year-old boys. It's like at any point they could just be like, this guy's an idiot, we're not going to listen to him at all, and like just like I'd be like, I don't know what to do anymore. But somehow through the camp, through like the fact that like this is how kids act and this is what is respected, this is what's good, like I basically never developed a theory of punishment like in my 4 summers there, or like really thought about it. I mean, you could send kids to like the principal's office equivalent or whatever, but I don't know if I ever did that once. And literally the only thing I would do is the first night of the camp, I would just like, we'd all get into our beds and I'd be like, everybody needs to respect each other, this is super serious, good night. And I wouldn't read to them or do anything, and we just go straight to bed. And then I was like, okay, well, I set the tone as harsh as possible. Now, whatever, the cards will fall. I pretended to be really tough on the kids for at least 24 hours, but now wherever the cards fall, they fall. But I don't know. That's just the point of like, you can't do, this is a full person who's going to have a full lifetime, and you can't do all the heavy lifting, even though like it feels like it. I mean, I'm not a parent, so what do I know? But I'm sure it feels like it falls on you.
Tell us how to parent, Alan. You're doing a good job.
No. It's one of those things where my gifting is speaking to experiences I've never had. That's my like gifting.
You're good at it.
Like, is when I see like someone struggling like in their career and their family and their single mother, that's where my ministry takes off.
Lean into that.
And I'm just like, have you thought about like getting a job that pays you more and like finding like cheap childcare? Like,
yeah. I just thought of a joke, and I normally have very little of a filter, and I didn't say it, and I still don't want to say it because it would have been sad and hurt a lot of feelings, and I don't want to say it. And I'm thankful that I have that much of a filter. Thank you, God. Matt, I'm going to flirt with you face to face, you beautiful man. Here you are.
You guys are being so sweet. I thought I'd come in. I only have time for one comment, but I thought Luke that you would appreciate this comment. Is my audio okay, by the way?
Yeah, good.
I'm not. Yeah. Okay. Cool. I watched that John Piper gets laughed at by 8,000 Christian counselors video. I'd never seen it before.
I want to know what you think. It's so wonderful. Jess and I love it.
Well, I think it's relevant to this stream today because it broke. I was so confused. Maybe this is not surprising to you, but I was so confused by it because I saw somebody who is intense and wears all his stated emotions on his sleeve, but he's got this way of delivering those emotions that are very dry. And people, when confronted with that, maybe even 8,000 Christian counselors, when they're confronted with that, what they hear is, I'm not sure what's going on, right? Like, I don't know if this guy's even taking himself seriously, much less this crowd. I'm going to laugh to ease the tension because this guy's like way super intense. I don't know where he's going. That was my reading of it, and I felt really bad for him.
Okay.
Is that, but that's not your reading of it, right?
I mean, that's part of it. That's part of it. Let's just,
Okay.
This is so, I've referenced this a lot, and this is so great. Can we watch it? Let's watch it together. Let's do this. This will be excellent because it is so
it's short.
lovely. Yeah, it's like 5 minutes or something. So is it showing up? No, share this tab. It's not showing. There it is. Okay, it is showing up. All right, let's get in here. Are we gonna have preview? I'll make it bigger.
I feel honored and humbled and vulnerable and exposed to speak to the American Association of Christian Counselors. I don't think I could think of any other audience that would be more likely to see straight through a speaker than you would. And I take that to be a good thing. It puts hypocrisy on the table immediately. It makes true horizontally what we all know is true vertically all the time, namely God knows totally all the time whether any speaker is a fraud or a hypocrite, so you may as well know as well if he knows. It's a wake-up call to speak to people like you. I've never done anything like this before. A wake-up call to the realities of pretense in my life, suspecting that any attempt at schmoozing would be known right away. So I thought I would spare you the analysis and just go ahead and tell you up front that I'm a sinner. And I'm a man who, to be more specific, must crucify the love of praise every day. A man who struggles with the same 15-year-old adolescent fears at age 63, namely the fear of looking foolish.
See, this is our stream today. This is our stream. Sorry.
Feels it quickly when he doesn't get loved the way he wants to be loved. Who's almost never sure of the way he uses his time and therefore pretty regularly is all dealing with guilt feelings. A man who is short on compassion and long on critical analysis. A man who is prone to freeze up emotionally when he's tired and then feels instinctively justified in blaming it on somebody else. A man who loves to praise God in the great assembly and and feels a constraint on my spirit in my own living room. A man who has loved his wife for over 40 years imperfectly and spent 3 of those years with a Christian counselor trying to learn how to be Christ and the church to each other. A man who never feels sure of his motives, including the ones I feel right now about why I'm doing this. And you're a very
The first
strange
joke,
audience,
intentional joke.
because I totally did not expect laughter.
Okay, quick pause. I don't think he's joking. Still, I don't think he's joking. That's
Okay,
and that's
even
what's
there.
funny.
Yeah.
Even there, I don't think he's joking. He's like, you're a strange audience. I know Piper very well. I don't think he's kidding. All right, let's go back.
And I'm continually perplexed. So I guess I'd better just get used to it. This is a serious talk, in case you wonder. But this is strange.
But he's
so
killing as a
to
stand-up.
just kind of get it out of your system. I know that you've been set up for an hour and a half, maybe a little differently, but I'm just not used to being laughed at, you know?
So sad too.
So at one level, I thought maybe the reason I just did what I did was because I wanted you to be open to what I have to say, and I thought if I'm open with you, you might be open to what I have to say. At a deeper level, which I hope is true.
Okay, so I want to pause for a second because right there, I think what he's revealing, and this is what I would say, get ready, Neil. He's still playing the game of mammon. He's using transparency and vulnerability to try to woo the crowd, to get him on his side. And I think all that's earnest. Like, I think it's earnest. I'm not questioning his earnestness, but he's right there. He's confessing, this is what I'm doing, but he
Transactional.
Yes, but he doesn't have the self-awareness to see he's talking to a group of counselors who know this game. I don't know that they even consciously know the game or could say it, but they recognize it, which is why they're laughing. The laughter's telling you something. They're like, you're here just oozing vulnerability and transparency while simultaneously not being actually vulnerable and transparent because you're trying to control the situation through your vulnerability.
Wow.
It's so meta. It's so crazy. It's awesome.
Well, I mean, I feel like how often would you hear something very similar to that? You know,
A lot.
I mean, anyone who's fairly, somewhat eloquent, self-aware, when they describe their faith, like, oh, I've done this imperfectly, I've tried my best, like, I don't think that makes it like bad to say all the time, but if he's saying it in this context around people who've probably heard that speech, like, oh, why are you guys getting divorced? Oh, well, I've loved my wife imperfectly, and I know I'm not the best man ever, but like, I think we should stay together, and I promise to do better, and you can get a lot of similar like spiels like that, and maybe they've just heard it so many times that they're like, this is actually very funny.
Yeah, let's finish it and then we'll talk about it more. But I think because that part I think is so key because he's confessing why he set it up that way and they're still laughing. I don't know. I think I could talk about this a long time. All right, let's finish.
True. Also, I list those absolutely true, absolutely serious, and though they make you laugh, they make me cry. And I mean that, so you've got to stop laughing like that. I just don't understand you folks. I mean, I'm going to stop telling you not to laugh because we're creating a real guilt situation here. My other reason for telling you the list of the besetting sins that I could think of in my life is because I want you to know as I begin that I love grace. I love the grace of God. I desperately need the grace of God every day of my life. And so I'm not talking hypothetically about grace. So since I'm so needy of grace and we have a few minutes left to deal with this, let me pause and thank the Lord for it and pray for his help. Would you pray with me?
All right. That's it. They don't show the prayer. But I don't know. So Mitch, my boy Mitch, definitely disagrees. Tayo has things to say. Let's talk about this for a while. Be great.
Yeah, I saw that many years ago. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was listening to John Piper around the same time, so this video popped up and it was weird. But on a communicational level, you immediately have this dissonance, but then it's not dissonance actually between the audience and the preacher. On a level, he achieved what Norm Macdonald would aspire to achieve in his whole career, but he could not, because Norm Macdonald was a comedian. So even when he was cheating the laughter out of the audience, saying something completely not to laugh at, he still was a comedian. But John Piper was not a comedian, so he transcended the comedic level of McDonald. But it's revealing because you have the counselor that expect that you are playing the game.
Yeah.
And then you have and then there is the person that is opening up, that is expecting that the counselor is aware at the same level of him, of his opening.
See, I imagine
it make me cry. It made me cry and laugh at the same time.
Exactly, because it's incredibly sad. Because what I see is like little boy John Piper up there trying to be a good little boy, trying to do all the things he's supposed to do, in as much as he is aware. But the problem is John Piper isn't very in touch, I think, with the shadow. I mean, to be frank, his own shadow, really, even though he tries to be. And so in that vulnerable, trying to be vulnerable thing, he's not really being vulnerable. And then he's talking to a bunch of counselors who probably aren't really that familiar with him, because, if you're that familiar with Piper, he's just like, he's one of the most serious people I've ever run across. Like, he doesn't say a lot of jokes. Like, he's just deadly serious about things. Just don't waste your life. That's Piper. And it's something that I very much love about him. And so that's exactly right. It's like, I want to laugh, cry through the whole thing. It's such a wild, I don't know, there's so much in there and it's hard to even know how to talk about, but it is hilarious. And that's telling, I think.
For my part, I give him grace. I don't want to judge him. And even if the opening, the vulnerability is performative, this is not where the place where I want to point out the fakery or the.
I don't know if we can.
Of a person, yeah.
I don't even think it's fake. None of it's. But this is the thing: is it's unconscious. He's not self-aware of it. So, are you?
How do you know?
Because he doesn't get the joke. He doesn't get why they're laughing.
I don't know, maybe I'm just a little softer. This feels like bullying. It feels like laughing at the guy that doesn't get the joke. Right. And I don't think it was, like you just said, he wasn't trying to be funny. You said that he's sincere. But you claim that subconsciously he's being insincere. Is that though? I don't get the analysis.
No, you can't. I don't know how one could be subconsciously insincere.
Okay, so when you say subconsciously, what are you pointing at?
The shadow. What you don't know that you don't know. What's below your articulable awareness.
And you're
talk about all the time.
You figured out that it's not integrated with his shadow because it didn't get the joke.
Yeah, essentially.
All right. Mitch?
Hey guys. Just wanted to mention again too, he addresses this kind of in detail on his podcast. He talks a lot about it. But yeah, to me, it just seems pretty obvious that they think he's doing something that he's not trying to do. Because if you the room full of counselors, I don't know what persuasion they are, but if you grow up in church or listening to sermons, you're used to kind of like this basic kind of structure in a sermon, and a lot of times people open up with like a joke or an anecdote or a story or something funny, not just in sermons but in just oratory generally, as we know it. And two, I think people aren't used to people being very, very sincere, very, very serious, or increasingly so. So I mean, I don't think there's any like deep level to this video.
You see this all the time, and I just want to say this because you see this all the time in open meetings where, especially like bigger meetings where it's like, there could be anywhere between 500 to 1,000 people there. They'll have an Al-Anon speaker there and an AA speaker there, and the Al-Anons don't laugh and the AAs do, and they laugh at inappropriate things. A buddy of mine, this dude was as yellow as Homer Simpson when I saw him coming into the rooms. His liver was completely shot. And one day before a meeting, it was a bunch of us. We were reading the book and hanging out and shooting the shit. And he starts telling us the story about how terrible it got. He said it got so terrible that he was pissing the color of Coca-Cola. Like that's bad. That's what happens with end-stage liver. But we couldn't even help it. Him as well as ourselves. It was probably some of the greatest laughter that I've ever had, and it was like this identifying thing. The thing is like, my guess is a lot of those people that were in that crowd, I think that they probably identified with a lot of what he was saying. They're just hearing it in a different frame.
Totally.
And he may be picking up on it, but he's also trying to be really sincere in the way that he can. He's not going to break away from it. But yeah, I mean, I do feel bad for him because some of that stuff is like, I feel bad for him in this way. Sometimes you have to let go of the seriousness. You
Literally,
really
the
do.
same thing happened earlier between you two, Luke and Chad. Where Chad, you told that story about the theft, and Luke was like, "I just see that story as, such a cute little story."
I'm right there with him, man, because that is hilarious. I laugh at that shit, like that. In AA, we say that laughter is the sound of freedom, and that's what we're getting at there. And so, if people can be offended by it, I'm often my buddy Matt and we are the two guys that will laugh at the most inappropriate stuff, and it's only because we did those same exact things. And we'll literally be the only two people in the whole room, like busting up, laughing our asses off because it's like, oh, thank God I'm not the only idiot that did that shit.
My feeling is that it would be ideal if you didn't laugh at someone who was trying to be serious and didn't want to be laughed at and was like, I mean,
I think I agree with that because I think that's probably the loving thing to do. But like because of the crowd dynamics and because of the way that that thing happened, that didn't happen. And I think probably the thing that's the most it's simultaneously funny and sad is that John Piper can't laugh at himself. Like he's so serious, he can't laugh at himself. He couldn't he couldn't pull out of his mode of just like, I want to be deathly serious about this and the gospel and everything else to see what was going on. He's so like myopically zoomed in to laugh at himself. And this is the thing. This is like a deep subject. This is like Umberto Eco's book, The Name of the Rose, gets at this. Is like, what is the core? This like hidden book of Aristotle or whatever is about like, it's this whole idea that creation came out of divine laughter versus divine seriousness.
So, no, I mean, you can't. I don't think he's unwilling to laugh at himself. I just think there's a place for seriousness, and that's what he was. That's what he was offering, and so he wanted to say, "Hey, by the way, I am being serious. Like, He just kept trying to bring them back to like his rhetorical intention.
Sure.
I think so he was just trying to say, no, you're misreading me, and they just
Okay.
couldn't be wrangling him.
But here is this an emerging emanation thing? Because he's sitting up there from the pulpit teaching the emanation, the leader, the head in that body, and then there's the congregation. They're like feedback. Listen to the feedback. Like whatever you're trying to do is not being received that way. So then you can continue trying to impose that, or you can read the room and have it. And
I think you could recommend ways that he could have wrangled him.
Yeah,
in
I
better,
think he
but
attempted that. He said, he even contextualized, said there was something else before me. Maybe that's why you guys are in a silly mood. But I'm trying to be serious. He keeps trying to bring the room back to it. But you're saying he should relinquish what he's trying to present and just embrace what the start a comedy show. What did you want him to do in that moment?
What do you do in the head in any institution or body when the body keeps telling you something that's opposed to what the head is wanting to push on the body?
It depends.
What do you do there?
It depends. If the body is trying to do something deadly, then the head should over. If your child is running onto the road, grab them. Don't. There's no time to listen to them. So there's no one size fits all, depending on the situation. In this situation, what did you want him to do?
Tayo, in respect, a parent-child illustration is like the case that proves your point. That is not a peer interaction between a parent and a child. That relationship is totally different.
Okay, yeah.
But I think
I'm not extending it to match them directly. But what I'm trying to get at is you're saying that you should be more aware of the crowd and take their perspective into how it's presenting. And I'm saying it did that. But what did you want him to do to like incorporate the crowd more? Was it to, to realize, oh, sorry, I don't understand what Piper could have done. If there's a man on stage that's being laughed at, that's confused about why people are laughing at him, and he's trying to be serious, he's trying to say he's trying to have a moment of confession, and people are laughing, and I can understand why he's confused. And I think he did his best to try to, okay, this is what I'm trying to do, and I'm trying to bring you with me into this moment, but unless you feel the moment was insincere and that's why it wasn't getting through.
Yeah. So what I want to do, I want to hear what Mark has to say, but what I also want to do is practice what I preach. So right here, I'm running this live stream. Clearly, there's people that are pushing back on me. So do I want to keep imposing my will and my perspective and insisting on it, or try to hear what the pushback is? Because this is a thing, Tayo, that I've had repeatedly with you, and this is where the little corner has to get more relational. I think I say things that annoy you a lot. Like I hear annoyance and frustration and a little bit of anger in your voice. And I truly want to know why that happens.
I think it's inconsistency. It's saying this is how I am, and then so for example, I feel you see the I don't really get a lot of from the last stream, but basically there's a game A, game B, there's a zero-sum game way of looking at things, and you're very much against that. And I think in being very much against that, you are embodying that. Like, so it's your last stream, I don't remember if it was the last, but the last comment I left on your video saying that we should talk about it, it was mainly the proselytizing thing, and saying I'm not proselytizing. And then when someone points out that you're proselytizing but not proselytizing, it's like, no, you don't understand me. And that's my frustration, is like when something's pointed out, it's like, no, you don't. Unless you think the way I do and use words the way I do, then you just don't get it. And yeah, that's where I think the frustration is. But regarding this type of video, the reason I came back on was I felt like it was like, oh, you got that up to say, oh, let's laugh at John Piper for being a silly goose. And I'd never seen the video before, and what I saw was a man that's just being confused and trying to, I didn't get what the joke was.
Well, it's not, I mean, I don't know. I'll let other people talk.
Well,
we can see the things on two levels, because one is the emotional, the opening of the heart of Piper, and the other is a technical level, the rhetorical aspect of it, because it was, from a comedian point of view, if you have the perfect setup, everything that come up there is the punchline, and you cannot escape anymore. So you are trapped in the expectation of the punchline. And unfortunately for Piper, the setup it ended up being perfect. The people in a seminary have an expectation that the speaker open up with something light to relate, to get attention, and then move on to something serious. So there is an expectation of that. And then he tricked involuntarily when he says, when he was speaking about how God sees him transparently, and then he referred to the audience like they are seeing them transparently as well. So that's kind of trick the people. Of course, he's joking, because we are not seeing how God sees him right now. So he ended up in the loop, and he could not get out of it anymore. Wherever he was going to say, he was stuck in the perception of the joke. That is technically, from a rhetorical point of view, what happened. Then I cry at the same time, because I trust that was truly vulnerable, and he meant what he says, and he was giving credit to the audience to catch his spirit, and to not be laughed at. But normally counselor, they have experience with that, so they were surprised, and they were not expecting to have something open up on the stage, because he is on a stage. That is not a place where if you show vulnerability there, you are doing a performance of vulnerability. You cannot escape that stage aspect of it. You are on a stage. You can only perform that vulnerability. It cannot be what you experience in a one-on-one session with your therapist. So the audience was stuck in that mode of interpretation of the situation, and that was sad and was hilarious. And I'm sorry for Piper, but I think he get over it at some point, I hope.
Tunji, that was extremely helpful, because I was genuinely confused as to but I see it once you point it, I see it. And also, Luke, I don't want to be the thorn in your side. I know I come across on every stream like that, but it's the same way you say you're passionate. I also get passionate about things, and it's not. I know in the video you said that, do I think you're a hypocrite? No, I don't think you're a hypocrite. Look, I think you're a better Christian than I am. Yeah, you're a father. I don't think you're a hypocrite. I think that by definition, the fact that you build a mosaic vision means that you're always playing in contradiction and paradoxes, and you can't. I get confused by you getting frustrated when people get confused by your mosaic vision. It's built into it's a feature of the way you speak, not a bug.
Yeah, no, that's very true. That's very true. It's more man, I don't know. I understand not everybody's like me in this way, and it's not the weird thing about me is that I get very, like, I even feel it in the stream. I get very most of my anxiety and depression comes out of like relational tension. Like I said this once to Sherry in a private message. I don't know. We were talking. I think we were maybe talking on the phone or something. And I'm not saying this as some sort of like virtue signal. I'm really not trying to, but it's the same with my wife or anyone. Like when I'm having anxiety, for me is always about relational strain and stress. I don't really have existential anxiety about politics or the world or whatever. I do have a little bit about my car. Like I have fear about my car breaking down, but that's just because I drive old cars and it stresses me out. I don't want to go through the work of fixing it. But like even in this stream, and this is deeply tied to probably childhood wounds and like so whatever. I'm just using this language because it's what I know, but like Enneagram 4 stuff, and Enneagram 4s tend to the whole idea of the Enneagram is it stems from childhood wounds. Like your formation comes out of a wound, a very early wound. And it's something like the Enneagram 4 is something like they were not seen or resonated with by either of the parents. Like neither of the parents saw them. And so like I have this weird codependency thing. I'm saying all this to say that like when someone like with you, Tayo, like I get stressed and withdrawn. Like I had the impulse when you were mad at me to just be like, I just want to stop the stream. Like I just want to go away and be sad.
I'm glad you didn't. Thank you for not doing that.
And like, and this is really like, this is actually how I was in the evangelical world. This is ultimately why my wife said we had to leave, is because there were things that I saw that I had issues with. And I have this weird temperamental makeup that like, it's kind of like Jordan Peterson. It's just like, I have to say it because I'm so afraid of the fear of not saying it, of not speaking what I see, you know, like it's not even courage. It's like it's a weird fear of being quiet when you shouldn't be quiet. You know, it's that whole, but like it never went anywhere and it couldn't be fixed and it couldn't be resolved. And then it would create relational strain where I was just so neurotic and sad and simultaneously angry all the time that my wife was like, we have to leave. We can't continue doing this. Cause I probably wouldn't. And she just had this realization the other day. She's like, cause it was some other context. It was some other pattern that was similar. And she's like, you probably would have never left the church. And I'm like, no, I probably wouldn't have. Like I would have just, that's actually confessionally that's the only thing that can really ever, I've only ever been suicidal in my life. And this isn't some tactic to like curry sympathy. It's just me trying to be honest. When I get to the point relationally and think like with this, I do care about you and your opinion and people in this corner, which is the weird thing of this little internet. But like, it's probably not so serious to me that it would make me suicidal because hopefully I'm mature enough where I'm just like,
I do not
this
want
is
you to be your
fine.
13th reason why, Luke.
Huh?
I said I don't want to be your 13th reason why.
No, I know that. And I'm not saying that, but it's just like part of this is there are no solutions, there are trade-offs, and to be blessed is to be cursed as well. Like I'm so relationally attuned and like empathetic that like I have and that's codependency technically, that I have a really hard time. I've said this before. I will cave for the sake, even though I have this weird first percentile politeness where I speak very strongly about things, I will cave for the sake of the relationship in a codependent way every time if push comes to shove. Like I just will.
And I do get that sense with you, which is why but also since we're all confessing, my thing is I struggle to, if we're all kumbayaring and yaing, rightly or wrongly, I will embody the alternate perspective.
I'm very much like that too. I like that.
And so there's a sense in which when you speak and you can only speak from your own person, you speak as if the matter is settled.
Yes.
And that's the only way you can speak. But when we speak, we're casting spells. The effect that the spells you cast have on me, just like I can't control the effect my spells have on you. It's both ways.
Yeah.
So I think if I deem there are parts of the little corner that would not welcome too much pushback, but I know that this is a space where you encourage that, even though you feel it more than most people usually do. You feel the relational conflict more than most do. So I do appreciate that. I am grateful for that, which is why I keep coming back and keep poking.
No, and that's good. One more thing to that, and then I want to hear what other people have to say, because the reason that is that's been a key part of my own discipleship and even small groups. Like I've had at least one. There's one very big in my mind because I've always been this way. I've always spoken strongly about things, and I remember one point. There's been at least one or two where it's like it's very much the Matthew 18 principle of, you know, go to your brother, talk to them, and bring another one, and then whatever. I've had my first like really intense small group in Sovereign Grace Ministries. I remember my small group leader, like we all got together in this room, and I thought we were just having a regular small group, and it was essentially like a spiritual intervention where, and in retrospect, like I don't know, there's a lot of complicated things with that group, but it was something where the small group leader brought something to me, and then like everybody else around the table was just like, yeah, we all see this, and like it hit me like a weight of bricks. Because like you can very much live in your own narrative, your own left brain description of how you see things, and then you're not open to the revelatory thing. And that's the whole point of kind of an intervention, is to bring in weight, because you're trapped in this mode of existence. And I love that. Like that's, if you try to eradicate all the thorns in your side and the people who disagree with you, I mean, that's like one of my big whole shticks with Canonize the Heretics, right? Then you never like, I don't want to conform everyone to my image, that's not the goal. Anyway, all right. Mark, Mitch, Tunji, we got real.
Well, that's good that you guys got real. That's good. You need to do that. Can you hear me okay? I'm trying something different to get better sound.
Yeah, you're loud and clear.
Yeah, I don't know if I have any light to shed on the Piper thing, because it seems like we can't escape our own lenses through which we see these things, and everyone has a significantly different take on it.
Yeah.
My view is considerably different from, I think, pretty much everyone else. I didn't take him as being laughed at, and I didn't take him as being as if it still seemed quite performative, even if you could be sincerely performative. And I think he was being sincerely performative, and the audience was there for a show. So even if he wanted to take them somewhere else, they weren't going to let him out of that deal. They came for a show. They were expecting a show, and being a showman, he still did his job. And I think all that can happen even in authenticity. But like I said, that's just my lens. That's just my take from my point of view. But if he was there for other reasons and was being laughed at, that audience made itself into a pretty unsafe space. And which takes me back to your parenting discussion, because the discussion about, you cannot perfectly protect your children. What is a parent all about ultimately? And when you think of from birth to adulthood, and even into adulthood, the job of a parent really is to provide a home, a safe place to which to go back to and get healing and restoration and reaffirmation. After going out into the world and getting the shit beat out of you, you have a home, you have a safe place. That's what parenting, I think, ultimately comes down to. I mean, and early on, it's different. Everything's very directed, but you try to give them. Jordan Peterson gets into this. There's risk as the kid extends further and further out, and then once you get into the teen world, it's real danger. And but you can't stop them. You can't prevent them from entering into that danger. So what do? You prevent. You're providing a place for them and a relationship with them that they feel safe to come home and get repaired. And that the audience going to Piper, that audience, if he was going in a complete, and if he was really not doing a whole kind of Larry David routine, and was not there, if that wasn't true, it seemed like comic timing. But if he was there being sincere and they were reacting in a completely different way and laughing at him, they were not being Christian as a collective.
Yeah,
they weren't being the church. How's that?
No, I kind of agree with that. It's just, it's so hard in these group dynamics because there's that, like what's happening in comedy or in a crowd like that is this collective unconsciousness. There's this weird thing that's happening where it's almost like everybody is caught up in a swoon of like a spirit that, like, how much are you capable, and it's going to vary probably from person to person, how much are you even capable of pulling back from that swoon? You know, like if everybody in a comedy club around you is laughing, you're probably going to laugh. Or it's like the elevator experiment where there's the experiment where everybody's facing backwards in an elevator, and then someone who's not in on it goes in. Like most people turn around, you know.
Well, there's a whole seduction relationship, you know, between, I mean, a lot's been made of this between great speakers and their audiences. And, you know, and he's a great speaker, and I don't know if he can not be what he is on stage, and the audience was there to be seduced. And damn it, you're going to seduce. You know, it's just these well, go back to Nuremberg, right? I mean, these audiences can get pretty dark. There's a lot of shadow in this dynamic, and what was really happening there, I don't know if I got enough from the clip to say.
It's still pretty neutral. I saw recently, I think Nate Bargatze, the comedian, he, you know, told a joke, and then he said, but in all seriousness, and then he told another joke, and he's like, no, but really in all seriousness, and then he told another joke, and it's just so tempting, and it breaks down our ability to be serious with one another. But I think, you know, both parties in this clip are pretty neutral. It's just a classic wire cross situation, which I like the question you asked a lot earlier, Luke, about, you know, should you enforce your will or just receive the pushback? I mean, either one. I mean, depending. Like you might should enforce your will if it's that important. Like if you're pretty sure you're right and you want us to know the truth too, or if you're convinced, you should go along with us. But I think that was our interaction that you were referencing with that question is also pretty neutral. So.
Yeah, I think of these things a lot as like The Body Keeps the Score, which is a book that I've never read. This is one of those books. I don't read a lot of these books. I just reference them, and my wife constantly makes fun of me. Like I'll talk about The Body Keeps the Score, which she has read, and she'll be like, she just smiles. Now we've got to the point where she just like, it's just a little smile where I know that she's making fun of me. But like that's the whole idea is you can, you know, in your mind, you can keep making choices because you can impose your will. You know, the elephant, the writer can keep imposing his will. That Jonathan Haidt illustration, which I don't know if people are familiar with, where Jonathan Haidt will say, that's how it works. The mind and the body is like the elephant and the writer. And, you know, you can keep directing the elephant until like there's a bunch of pizza over here or whatever that the elephant wants. If the elephant really wants it, it's going to go get it. Like, I don't care how hard you pull on the reins with the little rider on top. And the body is kind of like that. Is like you can impose your will to some degree. If the elephant is in sync with the body and agrees with the body, you can direct it a little bit, but it will reach a point where that's what the whole Body Keeps the Score is. It's like there are glaring symptoms and signals telling you about a problem that the writer is ignoring. And I think of all these things in terms of bodies. That's your physical body is that illustration, your mind body thing, but any body like that thing that we watched was a body, and Piper was at the front being the head of it, speaking, the speaker, the mouth of the body, and the body was giving feedback. And what exactly all of that was, I don't know. I have thoughts about it, obviously, of things that are going on, but I find it really fascinating because I don't completely understand it, you know?
I think you want to maybe turn the discussion inward for TLC and use it as a point of reference to say, when we're listening to people speak, are we responding in a constructive way to them, or are we more out of sync? Are we looking for, if say the audience with the Piper situation was responding inappropriately, the question is what weren't they seeing, and why couldn't they not see it? And so when I think of these encounters we have in these live streams or in person, are we just talking? Are we responding out of ourselves, or are we actually responding to the person that's speaking? And I don't know if I'm communicating, but
No, I think I follow what you're saying, Mark.
yeah, because it's really, I'm still not sure that even if we try to analyze the Piper video, we're still really only talking about ourselves. I don't.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So when we encounter each other in these small groups, or just lurk or watch as an audience member of a live stream, the reaction happening in our minds, or what may come out of our mouths, how much is in loving response to the speaker, as opposed to how much is me dealing with all my shit that's boiling around inside, and all my inner angst, my childhood anxieties, my traumas, my whatever, that are all the stuff that's unresolved, that's just coming out. It's not even controlled. It's just, we do it without even thinking. It's just bleh. We think we're thinking, but most of our thinking is just regurgitation out of control. And we can look very analytical and intellectual in the process, but I think we're largely BSing ourselves very often. It takes a lot of work and practice to actually respond to someone sincerely expressing heartfelt emotions and experiences. Like when you're sharing something about your parenting of a daughter, Luke, right? My instinct is to go with, well, what was my relationship with my daughter? Rather than to really focus in. I can integrate my experiences, but really it takes a lot of effort to get to not just speak totally from my own experience with my daughter, or my own experiences as a child or son or whatever. What I want to do is see you completely and to respond to you appropriately in a way that lifts you up, carries some of your burden.
Yeah. It's almost where like I am you. I see myself in you, and it's not relating through something abstract different than you. It's, I mean, I get what you're saying, and I agree. Like I know that it's a very, very hard thing to do.
It's a very hard thing to do. So we got to be forgiving with ourselves too. I mean, we got to say it's not going to be perfect, but it seems to me like a goal worth pursuing. And that's another thing that's remarkable that's happening on YouTube, that we're actually talking and trying to communicate in a deep way across a virtual space.
Yeah.
Wow, who thought that was possible? Maybe Mark Zuckerberg. I don't know, but it's an interesting vision, and you guys are setting it up. I think you should deserve real praise for that.
I don't know
Thank you.
what this, well, I mean, I don't know what this thing is. I obviously see value here, which is why I'm here. But then, like, I've been talking a lot about trying to convey, I don't know. I'm always thinking about the wife story, like the internet wives of like anybody who's in TLC who's married, and it tends to be wives, but I mean, it could be husbands, Marielle, Sherry, of trying to communicate why because this is seemingly to me, this is a newly emergent thing, and trying to communicate to someone why I find this valuable or do it. It's so I don't know, it's very strange and it's hard to do, but yeah, it's brilliant. I don't know. Like these are, I think I have more intimate conversations much more frequently through technology than I do in real life. What the hell does that mean?
Well, these things are, it's kind of tidal. Like, I mean, you guys, it flows in and out, right? And comes in and out of focus. Like you and Tayo had a moment of very sincere relationship through this medium with an audience, small, but it's still an audience that was able to observe and then maybe offer a little input. But I think it was still pretty deep and pretty profound, and probably deeper than you're probably going to get around the office cooler or water cooler in the office, right? Or in regular life. It's hard to have real. What is it? The whole thing is women will talk face to face, men talk side to side, while doing something, fishing or working or whatever. We're in some ways, this is a feminine space, right? Because we are talking face to face, but with a filter, right?
That's the goal.
It's a little different.
Masculine language.
Yeah. So it looks different today than it did a year ago, and it's going to probably look different a year from now than it does now today. So it's evolving and it's shifting, and then new people are going to be bringing in their influences too. The thing that I would say is go back to what's the purpose and keep focus on what you're trying to build. And for me, it's like I said, you want that. You want a kind of home, a kind of place for people to come to, and they may come through the front door and go out the back, but it's just, that's okay. They're moving through, but it's a place of restoration, and to get fed and do the stuff that Jesus did, only it's all virtually, healing, feeding, a little casting out of demons occasionally, whatever comes, but they come through and they get ministered to, and they may move on, they may participate,
Yeah, no,
but I think if it's, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just if you make it about you, there's some of it, like we see so much Christian YouTube, the big Patreons. I mean, it's super chats get elevated questions. We've seen it. We see a lot of that, and it's like that's the dark side. That's the evangelical services with the smoke machine and the laser show. But not that. I think if you make this about home, about safety, about ministry, I think you'll be good no matter what you do, whatever shape it takes. And you were going to speak, and I'm going to shut up. Thank you, Luke.
No, you're great. Go ahead, Tayo.
No, go, Al.
I don't even remember what I was going to say. I'm just seeing these comments of like Anthony says, if I do a podcast, I need a co-host, and he's offering you up on the sacrificial altar.
That would actually be great because I say very little and you're very good at speaking, so it'll be perfect.
Yeah. Like your conversation with those Canadian welders, you can be my token black guy.
Happily, Luke. I will be a token black guy anytime. Just to put some emphasis on what Mark was saying, I think I've said this to Lance and probably other people in the Discord that probably the reason why Luke triggers me the most out of anyone is because it's the one I see most of myself in, and it's never really about Luke. It's always about the things in Luke that I see that I'm like, oh, I don't know if this gives me a chance to do some open processing with like myself using you as the body. So I feel like and it's not fair on you because that does take some emotional toll on you, which I am sorry for because I really do love you and I do appreciate what you're doing.
Well, thank you for that. No, it's good for me. I mean, it's emotional anti-fragility. I'm a very emotionally fragile person. I mean, not as much as I used to be, maybe, but I want to be less so. As somebody who's so emotional, and Chad knows this too. Chad's this way. It's not that emotions are bad or facts don't care about your feelings or any of that kind of nonsense. Emotions are a real serious metric or vector, but you don't want to be, and this is a big orthodoxy thing. I mean, you don't want to be controlled and dictated by them. You know, take every thought captive to the obedience of Christ type thing. And so the thorn in your side or whatever, even if you are that, everything is a blessing if you receive it as a blessing. It's not, I need to be okay with people adamantly disagreeing with me and pushing back and even doing it poorly at times. Not saying you are, but like,
No, I am.
it's, you know, it's good, you know. I'll start quoting the book of James, because I know that Mitch likes it when I just start quoting scripture. But, you know, like, suffering produces perseverance. Perseverance will make you whole and complete, not lacking in anything. You know, that's
Amen.
Christ was made perfect by what he suffered. You know, you think you're not gonna go through the same things? That's kind of that's the road. So,
And I think, just to add more in the context of what it is that we're doing on this thing, it worries me that I too have more meaningful conversation on via technology than in real life. But I can't really blame YouTube for that. That was since the phone wasn't the smartphone, where I'm now speaking to people in Nigeria frequently and all of that. But there is a depth to TLC conversation that's different to different online spaces. Chad has been out there, you know, finding other flotillas, and whereas there are other people having conversation, there are other people having conversation and also meeting offline and doing all of that. The center, the thing, the religio, the binding thing is different. Now, I don't think we've been able to fully suss out what it is that actually bind TLC members together, but I think that's part of that's a feature, not a bug. And yeah, I think the more we do what we're doing rather than talking about what we're doing, the better we get at what we're doing, if that makes sense.
it's how anything works, right? You know, I mean, practice. You gotta learn the scales, learn the scales, learn the scales. And I mean, that's kind of what we're doing. That's the whole dojo thing. Because whatever
I
this
think,
thing is, we're doing it. We've had a lot of practice.
like the dojo, though, it's just like the studio where you practice and you go out in real life. And I think these skills are going to be translated ultimately into thousands of small groups around the world. I don't see why it can't be. I think that's what PVK's vision is. It took me a long time to get it, but I think whether he said it or not, I'm guessing that's kind of where he's thinking this all goes.
What is that?
But we're modeling the discussions, we're modeling the behavior online, but it's going to be ultimately realized in thousands of small groups around the world in a loosely networked, in both estuary, but also in churches, synagogues, and wherever else it ends up.
Well, a lot of people have talked. Well, go ahead.
Go ahead.
So God willing, Musk's as well, but we'll cross that
God
bridge.
willing. God willing. I'm not the only one who struggled. Someone else mentioned that they struggle with. It was Nate. He struggles with Islam. I struggle with Islam. I struggle with any form of fundamentalism and authoritarianism. So
same.
You're on the
right. Get me around a Nazi or a communist, and I'll get crazy too. Anything authoritarian triggers me.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I know we've had some really great lurker commenters in the corner who were Muslim. I think his AO was a guy who I know I've seen who has comments on here. I'm pretty sure is Muslim, and dude was brilliant, seemed really charitable, empathetic. I would love that voice to increase in here as well. And I mean, there's a lot of people who've spoken about Neil talks about this a lot. I think there are things, and this is somebody was saying this the other day, very much so, that they were saying this is incredibly practical, like what we're doing on here, because like my wife will often say that, like, let's get practical, and like, you know, we can't all sit online and just theorize and talk about ideas all the time, but this stuff is really, it has very much translated to positive application and interactions with my wife and my kids and everyone in my life, you know, these training sessions. And yeah, I think that's what we're trying to do, is model it and model how to have good interactions with people that aren't just about ideas either, because it's, I don't know, that's something I'm very passionate about in my streams. Like, I obviously talk about ideas a lot, but the thing, I mean, that's one of the ways I figured out that I was Enneagram 4 versus an Enneagram 7 is it's I'm always more about the relationships, because that's one of the, I remember I misdiagnosed for about a year and a half because I thought I was an Enneagram 7 with an 8 wing, because I like confrontation. Or I don't actually. I've learned I don't. I'm kind of like Jordan Peterson. We have almost identical big fives, actually. Actually, me and Michaela have almost identical, but his is similar too. Because the 8 on the Enneagram is the challenger. So they really, like, the 8 is the most obvious to type on the Enneagram. But I'm also, because of my childhood, I was also kind of a 7, which is the enthusiast, which is kind of like Peter Pan, like incessantly a child, always looking for fun. Like, they avoid pain through just FOMO and seeking fun all the time. And I was kind of like that when I was younger, and still can be. There's aspects of that I can be, but then I have all this, like, all of my favorite art is dark and melancholy, and I really like dark things, actually. All my favorite music, favorite film, all that stuff is just like really hard subject matter, dark things, terrible events. And I enjoy that with other people. Like, I could just sit and someone else sharing to me the darkest things of their soul. Like, that's all I want to do all day. You know, like when I went on this men's retreat, this Illumin men's retreat, it was all these guys just sitting around sharing stuff they share with hardly anyone else in this closed circle, and like crying about it. Like, I would just do that all day, you know, if I could do it. And so then the question was to diagnose. I remember typing in some forum, like 7s versus 4 mistyping. And it asked the question, does thought serve feeling, or does feeling serve thoughts, thinking? Because in the Enneagram, it works in these 3 triads. Sorry if this is all too technical, but I know Mark's here. Enneagram 6. I need to talk to you about the Enneagram. Mark really knows the Enneagram. Mark's a really interesting guy. I'm gonna have a conversation with him. But he probably says that because of anxiety, because the 6 is like the most anxiety prone of the Enneagram. But for me, thinking definitely serves feeling, and that puts me in the heart triad, because the 4 is in the heart triad versus the 7 is in the head triad. So anyhow, there you go. I talked for like 5-10 minutes on giving context for why I'm an Enneagram 4.
I had absolutely no clue what you were talking about. That was great.
There's a series on YouTube with Richard Rohr where he goes through the last name is Rohr, and he goes through the Enneagram in detail. It's I did it a long time ago, and I can't remember. I know I'm a 5, but I can't remember if I was a 7 or 8 or something. I don't remember and I don't remember which was the primary and which was secondary, but I definitely am living more 5. It seems like I can get myself into a real to be or not to be situation.
Those are good numbers indeed. You can say that.
Yeah.
Very nice numbers.
But
Dave, I don't put too much into it. I just really like it, and it's benefited me a lot. But again, it's not like I think even the deepest practitioners and people who know about the Enneagram, they wouldn't say, like, don't treat it like it's you don't treat the Enneagram like biblicists treat the Bible. That's not the proper way to use it.
Right.
Rohr. Yeah, Rohr is a here we got Alan making jokes.
I can't see. My screen's too small to comment. So what are people saying?
He said
they don't like Rohr.
First about the Enneagram, because this is what, I don't know, like conservative, more fundamentalist Christians will often say the Enneagram is like satanic and has occultist origins and stuff. And I'm just kind of like, I don't really care. And so he said, "Is it Satanism?" Just asking the question, and then he said, "Luke is a 666." So, you know, he's being funny.
Well, thank you
Yeah.
for letting me on. I'll talk to you guys later. Good luck.
Thank you, Mark.
God bless.
Well, and I've been, see you, Mark, and it's probably been 2 hours. This is longer than I normally go. No one has come in to take over for me. So Tayo, Tunji, got other things. Last words, famous last words.
I look forward to your podcast.
I don't know what it's going to be yet. We'll see. I mean, I don't want it to be exactly this, and I need more structure on it. That's been repeated advice. Like Lance has said, given me that advice. You know, like I can keep doing these things. This will maybe be parts of it, but I need to have different arms and more structure, because this kind of thing appeals to a narrow range of people who apparently like to be confused and just thrown into the chaos of my paradoxical mosaic vision.
Is it going to be TLC centric, or are you looking to?
Yeah, that's a good question, man. Parts of it, probably. Like, there'll probably be parts of it, because if I end up putting live streams on there, and if that's part of it, that's definitely going to be. And a lot of the people that I know, and if I did interviews with, are probably going to be TLC or TLC adjacent. But I also want it to be more than that. My kind of broad vision of it as the person podcast is like it's about the person broadly, generically, but then also very much specifically, it's about me. But it's also not about me, it's about you, because that's part of what the person is. That's part of my multiplicity, is my relationship with you. So then I thought you could have all these branches of the arm of what makes up a person, but it's all centered around me, because I'm the center of it, not in like a egocentric way, but as a particularity of that broader idea.
You are actually the center of it.
Yeah. Yes. Which is part of the personal thing. So then I would interview people that I know. So I could interview people from TLC. That could be an arm. I've thought about, like, I could interview people from my community, from my neighborhood. If they're willing, I could interview people from my church. I would interview my family members and talk to them about just, like, I don't know. But then I need to come up with different scripts and what those conversations would look like. But all of that kind of builds out all the different morphic fields and multiplicity of what makes a person, who is a multi-unity of many different relationships. You know, that's what a person is, I think.
Yeah. So maybe another time we will have the time to ask you more about your non-duality kind of ideas that are at the margin of my knowledge as well. I'm not sure that I understand the extent of what you say sometimes, and I'm curious to put it in more theological term. That will be interesting for me, because I have an idea of what non-duality is, and I don't think it's reflecting of what you mean when you say
well, there's
non-dual.
That's good, because there are distinctions there. There's Eastern non-Christian non-duality, you know, I think somewhat, but then there's Christian non-duality, which are different things. I would say one is personal, one is not, probably. And I don't even know if that's completely true, because I'm speaking about traditions that I don't want to judge them and don't understand them fully. But then the what I mean by that biblically, that could be cool. I mean, that would just be a good exercise for me, probably, is to just, like, almost illustrate, kind of like make a mosaic of, like, biblical texts and patterns that I think point towards non-duality even. I don't know. So it's a good thing to think about. But all right, well, gentlemen, thank you for coming. And
thank you.
I'm gonna close this off. Sherry, I'll let you know how to change the thing, or I'll just do it in StreamYard, the icon.
Thanks everyone. Bye-bye.
Okay, see you guys. Peace out.